Welcome to the first community workshop for the Port of Wilmington Circulation Study. We are so glad you stopped in with us. You are currently viewing a slideshow with instructions on how to participate in today's workshop. These instructions will be on loop until 6:30. We have provided this buffer to the live presentation between 6:15 and 6:30 so that all attendees will have time to log on and gather in this waiting room. There will be a live presentation at 6:30 followed by a live question and answer session. We look forward to your feedback.
Well, good evening, everybody. I would like to welcome you to the first public workshop for the impact benefit analysis for truck improvements in the Port of Wilmington area. That's a really long title for a study project. So we are going to call it the port access or port circulation study moving forward. So I just wanted to say welcome and thank you for giving up your evening to help us to help guide this project and to make sure that that we're meeting all of the needs and concerns of the community. So we look forward to the dialogue as we move forward with this study. So with that said, I just want to go over a little housekeeping initially, and then we will get moving in with the presentation. Let's see, I'd ask that everybody remain on mute during the presentation. There's going to be a lot of opportunity for you to share verbally your concerns and comments concerning the truck access in and around the Port of Wilmington area. And so I would ask that you just remain muted, and we'll have opportunities. We're going to have a breakout session after the presentation where we'll go into small groups and you'll be able to talk there. And then at the end, we'll have a Q&A where you'll be also able to post questions. I would turn your attention to the chat box down at the bottom of your screen. So for those of you that are participating electronically, that's an option for you to put in any questions or comments that you may have during the presentation. Oftentimes, it's better to go ahead and get that thought written out before before the presentation ends. And I will say that we've got moderators in the background that are monitoring the chat, and so your chat will go to them, and then we'll address or answer the question at the end of this presentation. So again, I want to welcome you and thank you for coming and participating. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Dan Blevins from WilMAPCO, who's actually leading or guiding the project for a few words. Dan?
Thanks, Drew. Yeah, as Drew said, good evening, everybody. And glad you could join us tonight. We have a great turnout so far, looking at the number of attendees we have. We're not exactly competing with a good weather day outside, so we have that going in our favor. But we're here tonight to listen to all of you, about the topic of truck traffic in and around the Port of Wilmington area. The thoughts behind this study is to take a lot of those ideas that weren't able to get fully vetted through some of the great studies that happened in the area, like the Route 9 South Bridge circulation, the Wilmington comp plan. There's a lot of the ideas that were floating around there. If we really take this study and get into some of the weeds and some of the details on those, so we can really come up with moving some of those beneficial solutions forward if the study bears that out. Don't want to take any thunder away from Drew and his team, but we'll start with a little bit of background about some of those key projects, and hoping that we really get a lot of good feedback from you out in the breakout sessions. We'll be in small groups of 5 to 6 or 7, so it gives you a lot of opportunity to give some of your own personal experiences and feedback in this study area. So we're looking forward to that. So once again, we greatly appreciate your time and effort, and we hope you enjoy everything you hear tonight. Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. So our agenda for tonight is going to be just an overview of the project team, those folks that are presenting tonight and those that are going to be in your breakout group leading those discussions. We're going to go over the project in general. Just Dan provided a little bit of a briefing on that, but we'll dive into that a little bit more. We'll look at some existing conditions, review of some possible ideas that have already been identified in the studies. We'll be also looking for some new ideas. Then we'll go into our breakout sessions and then have a little discussion followed by Q&A. So we'll start off. Actually, let me just introduce myself since I haven't done that. So I'll be moderating most of this evening. So my name is Drew Boyce with Century Engineering, the project manager for the project, and I will take an opportunity to share the rest of the team in the next couple of slides. So let's just break the ice with a polling question. So for those of you on a phone, like a non-smartphone, I apologize, but because you won't be able to participate in the polling. But we've got a first polling question here, which is, how did you hear about this public workshop? So a lot of ways that we've been trying to reach the community to really get the word out so that folks can remain informed. And there's a lot of opportunities for folks to have gotten this information. So we'd be really interested in your feedback on this area so that we know how to strategize for the next workshop and for other workshops on different projects. We've got, I'll give it a count of 3, 2, 1, and then we'll close the polling. And then we'll go ahead and show the results and see where folks are. Yep. So from the results, you can see here that that the WMAPCO website is a great source to get the word out. There are 2 ongoing committees with the Route 9 Monitoring Committee and South Wilmington Network. Also, we've looks like a lot of folks have gotten the information based on their elected official website or email. So we appreciate the partnerships we have with our local elected officials and getting that information out, as well as Facebook and the flyer. We did print out some paper flyers, and that looks like it hit some people. So so thank you for that feedback. And let's see. So so the project is, we have a project team in place. So that is Century Engineering with help and support from Duffield Associates. And that project team is guided by an advisory committee. And the advisory committee is made up of local elected officials, local governments, community representatives, business and industry representatives, folks from WMAPCO, DelDOT, and as I said, Century Engineering and Duffield are providing the engineering support for the study. Specifically, we can see who is represented on the advisory committee. And so we are, these folks are really helping us in guiding the project, making sure that we are in touch with you, the community, and make sure that the project is going down the right path. And so, so you may have heard about the project from some of these folks. Obviously, some of you heard about the workshop from their website and email blast, so we appreciate that as well. So I'm not going to read through the names. You can see them. One point that I'll make is that this presentation will be posted on the WMAPCO website. And so the information will be available. This PowerPoint will be available, plus the live recording. I also wanted to mention that this workshop is being recorded, and that'll also be available for review on the WMAPCO website. This gives us a chance to share this information with our neighbors who may not have been able to join us tonight. All right, so the study area is essentially the area in and around the Port of Wilmington, roughly bounded by the Christina River to the north, and a couple of the neighborhoods south of 295 and 13 to the west. So that's the area that we're looking at. So I've got another polling question. We want to know really who you're representing here tonight. So we've got, are you a resident of the area? Are you a business owner, affiliate, somebody that owns trucks and has trucks and operates trucks in and around the Port of Wilmington? Are you an actual truck driver experiencing the issues in and around the study area? An elected official, or public official? Are you representing a government agency or other? So we'll give that a couple more seconds here for folks to vote. And so we're just trying to see who the audience is and make sure that we've got a good cross section of those who are interested in this area, with residents, businesses, government officials, public officials. All right, give it another 5 seconds and then we'll close the poll. So appreciate everybody voting on these. This information really helps us. Okay, I'll go ahead and share the results. So it looks like most folks that are here are representing government entities. And so that's a good thing, because those are the entities that are going to make these the results of this study actually turn into real projects. We've got a large representation from area residents, so that's great, because you guys are the ones that are experiencing and living with the current conditions that we're hopeful to improve through this study. We've got some business owners, so that's important. We want to make sure that the area continues to thrive economically. So I'll stop sharing that, and we will so the project purpose, Dan kind of touched on this, but it's really threefold. The basic premise is that we want to help improve the truck circulation in and around the Port of Wilmington. So we've got a lot of great studies that we've already done. We want to take those ideas. We want to actually get some new ideas, and hopefully some of that will come out tonight in the breakout sessions and in the Q&A. And then we want to refine those into a series of possible alternatives. When we get those possible alternatives, we want to assess them for how effective they're going to be at really achieving the purpose of the project. And not only do we want to assess their effectiveness of measurements, but really determine what their feasibility. Determine how they're going to impact, what impact they're going to have on the local roadways, how much of a traffic is going to shift, or truck traffic is going to shift from one road to another. And we want to make sure that we remain consistent with all the goals of the previous studies, with the South Bridge study and also the Route 9 corridor plan. Ultimately, this is to establish future capital projects. This is not a study just to sit on a shelf, but we want tangible recommendations that can move forward into the regional transportation plan with WMAPCO, and ultimately into the 6-year capital transportation program at DelDOT. So I've got another question here. So what concern do you feel is most important? So think about this a little bit because you only get one vote. And so of these issues that are illustrated here, so trucks using residential street, kind of where they're not supposed to, so more enforcement. Trucks using Route 9 to access the businesses in the port area, unauthorized truck parking, truck speeds in the area, additional growth in the port area. So which one of those do you think is the most important concern? And I'll ask that if you vote other, that you add that to the chat box so that we can see that. Okay, we'll give it another couple seconds here, and then we'll close the poll. All right, let's close the poll, and then I'll share the results. So, so of those who participated, we've got most folks are concerned about trucks using the residential streets, and so that's something definitely that the study wants to address. Additional industrial growth in the port area is the second most important factor, and so. You know, having good access into the port area is going to be critical to ensuring that additional growth. And then there's an other, and for some reason I can't see my my chat box, so I'm going to have to ask that we maybe share that in the Q&A at the end. And so appreciate your feedback on that poll. And all right, so one more polling question here. What would you consider the most important goals for the study? So we've got the concerns listed. And now we want to get your thoughts initially on what should the goals be. So we've launched the poll, so it's providing more direct connection to the I-95, ensuring the port area remains sustainable and competitive, keeping regional truck trips out of Southbridge, and then an other. And again, I would ask that if you're adding, if you're thinking about other things that for the goals of this study, please put them in the chat box for us. So as a sidebar, I did finally find my chat box and I got it open. So so one of the comments was concern was to not develop another independent artery. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and end the polling on this in just like 3 seconds. 2, 1. Okay, and I'll go ahead and share the results. And so, you know, the concern of most folks at the meeting is to ensure that the port remains sustainable and competitive. And so the truck access is important to that. Keeping regional truck trips out of Southbridge was number 2. And then providing more direct connection from the port area to I-295. And then there was a couple others. They were, we've got a comment for addressing environmental justice concerns. So that's definitely a concern and something that we're going to be looking at as part of the study. Okay, I'll stop sharing those results. Appreciate everybody's feedback on that. And so we talked about the fact that we've got a lot of ideas that have been generated from previous studies. And what we're trying to do is pare those down into something that we can recommend, like I said, to advance to actual construction, get them in the long range plan, and have it work through the long range plan and then into a 6-year constrained capital program through DelDOT. Some of the things that we're going to be looking at are environmental impacts, air quality. We're going to be looking at utility and railroad coordination. When we think about some of the ideas that we'll talk about in just a minute, there are significant impacts to those two things. Right of way, cost of the project, and then we're in the process of building a model to do a technical analysis on kind of level of service, travel time, truck diversions within the network, and truck volumes. Basically, what we're trying to do is with these certain ideas, how does that impact where trucks are on the network? We're taking trucks off of one road and putting them on another road, and then how does that impact the overall transportation network? And we're going to use that to be able to determine what alternative provides the most benefit. All right, so in thinking about what we might use in order to assess some of these ideas, I've got another polling question here for you. And so what would you consider the most important when weighing out these possible solutions? So we've got the number of trips that are going to be removed from 9, the complexity of the solution. So some of the ideas that we're going to talk about tonight are complex and expensive. And so should that be something that we look at? When we think about improved travel times on Route 9, you know, when the Route 9 corridor has a vision for basically creating a more walkable, bikeable, kind of ripe for redevelopment corridor, and how can this project help with those goals? And then there's an other. So again, if you could add to the chat box any other ideas, we'll definitely take those into consideration. So we've just got a few people participating on this one. I'll give it another 5 seconds, and then we'll close the poll. So for other, we've got local community input and achieving mutual goals. And so obviously, we definitely want to make sure that that is part of the matrix. That's why we're here tonight, part of why we're here tonight, and part of why we'll be back a couple more times to be able to talk with the locals and to make sure that we're in the right direction. So let me go ahead and end the polling. I'll share the results. And so this is, most of you think a good measure of effectiveness would be how many trips are removed from Route 9. And then and some of you think the complexity of the solution, years to implement. I'm assuming that that the sooner we can get these implemented, the better. So so we'll look at all of that in our process. So thank you for participating in these polls. They really do help us capture the community's feelings about where we're headed in the project. So let me talk to you a little bit about our work plan. So basically, we are identifying alternatives and developing these measures of effectiveness, MOE. And so the input that you just provided is going to help us with that. Community visioning, so that's part of this process right now. And hopefully we'll dive into that a lot deeper in the breakout sessions. Then moving forward, we're going to be assessing the benefits. So we're going to be developing this impact and benefit analysis, determine feasibility, and then select recommendations moving forward, and that'll culminate in a final report. So when we think about the existing conditions, many of you are from the area, as we saw earlier in the poll. So we know what's out here. There's limited access points to the port. There's growth that's happening in the port. We have a new port operator. They're looking to expand. There's other businesses happening. We're going to see more growth. We know that the communities are significantly impacted by the truck traffic. And then we've studied it before. You know, we don't want this study to be a repeat of what we've already done. We really want to get some tangible things out of this study so that we can move them forward into actual financial programs. So when we think about the existing conditions through the neighborhoods, we've got truck restrictions that are in place. So we've got no trucks over 2 axles signed. We've got no trucks over 5,000 pounds. All of this is existing. We've got compression, engine brake compression restrictions. So those are signed. And so what we're trying to do with all of these things is prevent these trucks from moving through these residential communities. So we also have the corridor, the Route 9 corridor plan, which envisions a different context for Route 9. And so we want to try to get less trucks on Route 9. And so where does that leave us? So that leaves us, you know, these higher type roads like 295, like 495, Heald Street, Garish's Lane, those types of roads that are already industrial in nature. We talked a little bit about these past studies. So we've got a lot of data that we're building off of. So we've got the Port of Wilmington parking study, we've got the Southbridge circulation, the Route 9 corridor, and the comprehensive plan. So Wilmington just came out with their comprehensive plan that talks about how we want to manage trucks in the south part of the city. So we want to leverage all of these past efforts. We want to make sure that we're maintaining the vision, and then we want to work towards coming up with what will be a consensus around a couple of things moving forward. And so that's the goal of this process, and really this is just the start of that process. We want to build off the past, obviously, but we're also looking for some new ideas. And part of this workshop is to get those new ideas from you. We'll be talking a lot about that in the breakout sessions, but we also want to build off the past plans. And so we want to make sure that we've got input from everybody. So not only the local residents, but also the businesses, business leaders, and elected officials. So we're going to get into a little bit of what has previously been studied. So as part of the Route 9 corridor study, one of the alternatives was Pigeon Point Road extended. So this is an option, an idea to extend Pigeon Point and make some connections onto I-295, diverts trips from Terminal Avenue and Route 9, and it links the industrial areas south of 295 into the corridor, or into this industrial corridor. So another possible benefit is increased development potential. This one comes with a lot of impacts. There's a lot of environmental impacts associated with it. Utilities are along the rail corridor, the railroad coordination, and then obviously the Delaware River and Bay Authority owns and operates 295. So there'd be a lot of coordination with them as we think about options for getting a road under 295 and possible connections to I-295. So we definitely want to dive into that one a lot deeper than the initial dotted line sketch that was part of the Route 9 corridor study. Another idea that the project team came up with was Garish's Lane. So this would realign Garish's Lane to formulate a two-way Garish's Lane from Route 13 to Route 9. And so some of the benefits of this is that it provides potential And also provides direct access to Heald Street. And so the benefits of this are it keeps trucks from having to go into Southbridge at all. So they can come out of the port area and go basically westbound on what it would be a Garish's Lane extended to access the Heald Street and other industrial areas without having to go into Southbridge. So that's an idea that we'll talk about, and all of these ideas we're going to talk about in the breakout session in more detail. So this is just an overview. Another alternative is Piles Lane, and so the state of Delaware initiated an effort to relocate some of the residential properties along Piles Lane in order to I guess, help alleviate some of the incompatible uses with residential houses and the trucks that are actually using Piles Lane. As you can see, we've got industrial areas right opposite, across the street from those houses. Those trucks still have to come into the area, but no other trucks are allowed down Piles Lane. So if in fact this effort does yield a relocation of all those residential properties, then there are some opportunities to create another access point down into the port. So this is something that you can discuss in the breakout room and that we'll be looking at further. So those are just a couple of the ideas that that we've done so far as part of this study process. We want to give you an opportunity to talk about these and other concerns and issues that you may have in a smaller group. And so the idea is that we're going to break up into groups, maybe 4 or 5 participants in a small group. We're going to have some staff members there. You'll notice you'll be able to identify the staff members because they'll have this cool Zoom background. And so they'll be easily recognizable. They can introduce themselves in the breakout sessions. And they're going to lead a conversation. And so the idea is to unmute yourself, turn your camera on, and have a conversation. That's really the goal for these small groups. And we really want to encourage you to participate as fully as possible. I will say that the sessions are going to be recorded, and they will be sharing their screen and have a map to help facilitate the conversation. So if you have specific concerns about a certain area, they can quickly go to the map so that everybody in your small breakout group can see what's happening there. I will say for those of you who are on a phone, if you go to the small group, just hit *6 to unmute yourself, and then you'll be able to participate with two-way listening and talking in the small groups. Okay. I will say that there is an annotate option. So if you want to draw on the map, you're more than welcome to. Imagine this as in this virtual world. It's like having a map on a table, and you've got a pen in your hand, and you're explaining to us exactly where you want the trucks to go. And so your breakout moderators will explain that in more detail as we get there. So I think at this time we're going to break off into our breakout sessions. So I would say that you will be automatically sent to your breakout group, so you don't need to do anything. Once you're in the breakout group, I'd ask that you unmute yourself and turn your camera on. And then we're going to be in the breakout sessions for about 20 minutes. So plenty of time to talk about any concerns that you have and any ideas that you have, and also to provide some feedback on the 3 alternatives that we talked about, the extension of Pigeon Point, the Garish's Lane, kind of a 2-way Garish's Lane, and then Piles Lane extended. So I'll ask our facilitator to go ahead and launch us into the breakout sessions, and I will see you all back here in the main room in about 20 minutes. Well, welcome back, everybody. 20 minutes went by pretty darn quick. Too quick, I think. So if you did not get a chance to share everything that you wanted to during the breakout session, please use the Q&A. There's contact information at the end of this slideshow where you can also send your comments and concerns. In addition, those of you that registered for the event will also receive an email with a post-workshop survey where you will be able to expand on any thoughts or ideas that you may have through that means as well. So we're just trying to reach as far and wide as we can and give as many opportunities for folks to share. So so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask each group to just do a brief, super brief report out on basically what they talked about. And so, so Ted, why don't you, we'll start with you. So if you could turn your camera on, your mic on, and you can tell
Sure.
us what your group talked about.
Sure. Thanks, Drew. Obviously the big, the big issue was kind of shielding the community, protecting the community from this industrial traffic, from this truck traffic. Couple good ideas came up of how to do that. The zoning is a big issue. The down zoning and the incompatible land uses between those high industrial areas and those residential areas. So if something could be done to kind of alter that zoning, it's kind of a low cost, kind of quick fix improvement. Better enforcement. We had Representative Cook on our panel, and he's very familiar with enforcement in that area in particular, any enforcement that can be done to kind of have trucks avoid that area would be extremely helpful. Any buffers that could be provided to help the community would be helpful. Even things as physical barriers to prevent trucks from using certain roads would be helpful. So quick synopsis of what we talked about.
Thanks, Ted. Sonia, how about your group?
So our group talked about a concern of extra truck traffic in the area of Edgemoor Road and 495. They're already seeing extra trucks in that area. And it is the one quadrant is residential. The trucks are coming from, kind of that Hay Road area. There's also a concern about, enforcement and the impact that signs have. They don't seem to work right now. What makes anyone think that they're going to work in the future? And then we did get some good questions that maybe in the live question and answer I can ask you.
Great. So appreciate that, Sonia. Jeff, how about your group?
Thanks, Drew. I obviously we had some of the same comments that the other groups did. A lot of emphasis on minimizing truck traffic impact on residential communities. Interestingly, we had some very helpful comments on issues along Rogers Road, which obviously we can get into more detail in our notes as we move into the study. We also, I think, had fairly unanimous consensus that everybody really likes the Pigeon Point Road extended option, but recognizes the costs and the other impacts associated with that. I think our group felt that would be the most impactful in terms of meeting the goals of the study. And I'll quit, be brief.
Thanks. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate that. Hey, Dan, how about your group?
Okay. Yeah, our group, we had really three main points. We should look collectively at the impacts of anything in this area, port area, but also what's happening up at the Edgemoor site. Is there any, synergies or, impacts that would be felt, from that in this area? The number one issue about any projects we look at are the community impacts, what those projects would do to the, to the direct community. And in that line, environmental considerations should be, taken into account in any solutions that we come up with.
Great, thanks, Dan.
Okay. Yeah.
Bill, your group?
All right, good evening, everyone. We talked about trying to find solutions where there's no losers, the solutions that both the port benefits from and also the residents. We also talked a lot about truck restrictions and trying to keep trucks off the residential roads, particularly Lamson Lane. Folks did like the Piles Lane connection, thought it could improve some connectivity, but thought also we could take a look at Old Ferry Road, which I think is just south of there as a possible punch through. We also talked about the connectivity benefits of the Garishes connection, but also that one might cause some more community impacts. You have Eden Park right there, so something to take a close look at. Echo what was said about Pigeon Point Road, but also that the Pigeon Point connection just to the north of that road would need to be enhanced to handle additional truck traffic. We heard it was filled with potholes, not a really great road to go down right now. So that's it.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate that. In our group, we talked about some of the same concerns. We also talked about the need to somehow assess the air quality and noise concerns from the industrial areas and the impact that that's having on the community. So a real concern was the air quality of the area. In addition, there was some discussion on kind of holistically looking at how freight is coming in and looking for opportunities for intermodal connections. So that's freight coming off of the container ships and maybe getting on trains instead of trucks, and also making sure that we look at the linkages between not only the freight coming in from the port, the truck mode, the train mode, but also how it might impact the airport. And so also autonomous vehicles in the mix of everything else that we have to consider as we look at that shift, where vehicles are going to be shifting not only to alternative fuels, but also becoming more and more autonomous, and how might that impact the study. So it sounds like that there was some really robust conversation within the small group. So I appreciate everybody taking the time to share your thoughts, your ideas, and your additional ideas in either support of or enhancing some of the things that we had already come up with. So so I really appreciate that. We're going to transition the discussion into a question and answer period. And so we really want to make sure that you walk away from this workshop with as many of your questions and concerns addressed as possible. So we've got a team of folks from DelDOT, from WMAPCO, from Century and Duffield that will hopefully be able to address some of the concerns, some of the things we're going to be possibly taking down and taking notes and saying we'll get back to you. This is definitely not our last appearance in the community and seeking public input. So we will be back with another workshop where we might be able to more fully address some of the concerns. So use the chat box to enter in any questions that you might have. I will say anybody on phone, and I'm not too sure if we have any participants on the phone, but if you are on the phone, I would ask that you hit *9 to be able to raise your hand, and that will let our moderator know that you want to ask a question, and then he'll call you out, and then hit *6 to be able to come in audibly into the conversation to be able to ask your question. So Dan, I think, has been monitoring the chat box. So Dan, if you could let us know whether there's any questions.
Hi, Drew. Yeah, Sonia has a couple of questions coming through right now, and then once she does that, then I'll relay the message over to you.
Okay. So again, I would encourage everybody, if you've got something on your mind, now's the time to get it in the chat box and get it addressed. You don't want to have any regrets after we end the meeting and say, darn, I wish I would have asked that question. So I just encourage you to go ahead and just to get that question out in the chat box, and then we can see if we can address it.
So we have our first question, Drew.
Yes.
First one is, how many trucks do we see in the area in a 24-hour period?
So that is that's a good question. One of which I don't have an answer for right now, but I can say that this is just the first step in the study. So we've looked and read through the existing reports. We've identified some of these solutions, and we talked about this this need to measure the effectiveness of all of these alternatives. Part of that is a very detailed traffic analysis. So we are in the process of building that model now. It involves robust traffic counting and turning movement counting and assessment of all the trucks. So I guarantee you at our next meeting, we will have detailed information on the traffic flows and the traffic volumes and the truck percentages on all of the area, the surrounding roads. And so we'll be in a better position to answer that at that time.
Okay, next question is, have we done truck counts and can we share any summaries?
So, so that is kind of the phase 2 of the study. So again, we will be doing truck counting. We will be doing class counts. So we'll know how many cars versus how many trucks on all of the area roads, so that we can do this traffic analysis that's going to give us the benefits of some of these alternatives. How many trucks are there now, and how many trucks are going to be there after we create or after we would implement some of these alternatives, say the Pigeon Point extension. How many trucks would divert off of Route 9 that are destined for I-295 anyway, and would use that corridor. And so all of that is coming kind of in phase 2. So I apologize for not having the specific answer right now, but we're going to get to that.
Okay, next question is, has the port seen any of these options, and do they have any preferences on movement?
So I will say that the port Gulf Tainer is the port operator, and they are part of our advisory committee, and so they are seeing this this presentation and all of our data kind of in a small focused group, and so they are able to provide us feedback, using that means and method. So so they are engaged in the process. They haven't really tipped their hand on which one they prefer at this point. Obviously, they want to make sure that whatever we decide, it provides a positive to their operation.
Next question is, do you foresee overnight/off-peak truck traffic increasing with autonomous vehicles and port expansion?
So, so I will say that off-peak truck trips, I know that the Gulf Tainer has an appointment system that they use to be able to manage the trucks in and out of the port, and so that's hopefully folks have been able to see a benefit from that. In that you don't have drivers showing up early or late and having to kind of hang out in the area waiting to get in. So they've really done a lot of investment and enhancement in trying to create an appointment system where it's kind of just in time. So the truck, they know exactly when they're going to be able to hook up, and so they come, they access the port, they hook up, and then they're on their way. So So I think that that those enhancements will create more opportunities for off-peak. However, you know, when the ship comes in, and so they need to move the product. As far as autonomous vehicles, it really, I'm not too sure whether we're going to see more off-peak with autonomous. It really is the operations of the port that are going to dictate the timing of when those trucks are moving in and out, specific to the port. Now, there's a lot of other businesses in the port area that do business really 24/7. So there are other businesses that are operating that run their business off peak. Obviously, if you're in the shipping business, time is money, and so you know, if at all possible, most businesses do like to operate, you know, outside of those peak commuter times, AM and PM.
Drew, this is Jeff. If I might just add one more comment to a point you made, and that is, while people think that all truck traffic is related to the port, and your comments about Gulf-Tainer managing arrivals and departures, but there are a lot of perimeter businesses that are considered the port, but are not under the control of Gulf-Tainer, for instance, and therefore it's a little more difficult to regulate those folks in terms of their arrivals and departures. So just a point of information.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate that.
Next question we have is, and I'm hoping I'm asking this correctly, but are there any additional trucks coming on or off at Route 9 and 495?
So additional trucks on or off at
Drew, that's my question.
Okay. So in our so for the edification of everybody in the meeting, we had talked about in our group some ideas about a additional access from 495 and Route 9 directly. Right now, the access happens at 13, and it happens at Terminal Avenue. And so the idea was, could you look at creating an additional kind of interchange where it would be on and off ramps at Route 9 and 495?
No, that's not what I said. I said
That's not what Bill said.
It's a choice between either dual on or dual off, so that you end up creating a continuous flow loop where you come off of Terminal Avenue and get back on at Route 9 with a new one directional interchange, or vice versa. You get off at Route 9, come into the port that way, and go back out Terminal Avenue. So that it creates a loop. So you either have an on ramp in both directions, or you have an off ramp in both directions, depending on which way you want the flow to go.
Thank you for that clarification, Bill. Appreciate that. Okay, Dan, any other questions?
Yes, next we have, will Port of Wilmington truck traffic be reduced once Port V2 opens in Edgemoor?
So Jeff, do you want to field this one?
Sure. I think it's probably safe to say that I wouldn't expect a reduction in the port traffic because these two facilities will operate somewhat independently. And therefore, I think it may be a little early to say definitively, but I think from what we understand at this point, they because of their locations, they operate somewhat independently. One's going to be a major container port terminal. And so while you do have containers moving in and out of the current port, a lot of that is going to be focused there. So it's possible it could divert some, but I think it's a little bit early to say. But if we can get an answer to that question from the Gulf-Tainer folks, we certainly will.
Thank you for that question.
Okay, moving on. Next question is, trucks park on SR9 and other areas waiting to get into the port, and it is very hard to get in and out of the local businesses when the trucks are parked there. Are we addressing that in this study?
So truck parking is, go ahead, Dan.
Oh, well, I was going to jump in on this one here.
Yeah, sure.
Obviously, yeah. Fortunately, right now we have another simultaneous freight project that is the Delaware statewide truck parking study. So, you know, not to shamelessly cross promote another study, but I did put in the chat box a link to that study itself. And actually, right now we have an active wiki map available that we're soliciting input on where people are seeing, you know, trucks that are, you know, they're congregating and parking. We've done a data analysis to identify, obviously to identify, but also undesignated parking areas. So obviously we'll take any question, you know, any feedback we get from this study here, but I think the information we get from that study will dovetail and be, you know, be captured in that report, in that study, the same as it would right here. So please go check it out.
Drew, if I could follow up on my previous comment. With the negotiation of the Piles Lane, if it gets to a point where the state takes over those properties, that would lend itself to a long queuing lane that takes everybody off Route 9. That Piles Lane is over a mile long, I believe, and there's nothing, at that point, there would be nothing on that road. So if you went 495 off only to Route 9, they can pull down, get in there and line up on Piles Lane and have no impact to the greater community.
That's a good point, Bill.
Drew, in our group, one of the concerns that was brought up about the Piles Lane, and to Bill's point, was air quality. That if you do have trucks that are at least fueled by petroleum products, you know, a long queue of trucks there could impact the adjacent community in terms of air quality.
That's very true.
Jeff.
Yeah, we heard the same thing in our group.
In the case, if you ran it in the reverse direction, then you've got Terminal Avenue could be the queuing area. And no impact to Route 9 and the residents directly off of Route 9. It depends, which gets back to my Route 9 on-ramp only or off-ramp only. As to what's going to take as many trucks away from the surrounding communities, Oakmont, Rose Hill Garden, all the other communities in that area.
This is Representative Cook. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Your host took my start video off. I don't know if she blocked me out. I don't know if she's going to put me back on, your host.
Here,
anyway,
I can, let's see if I can ask you to start the video. There you go.
I'm in. All right. What Bill's talking about, I'm one of the heads of trying to get Piles Lane cleaned up. A lot of people didn't want to leave Piles Lane. They got a couple people to buy out. You know, the state is not in the housing buying business. So actively, I'm trying to see if us in the county, I guess, can do something, because it's very, very, how can I say it? There's Hamilton Park, there's Eden Park Gardens. They're all getting the environmental injustices that are happening through these trucks. And Gulf Tainer, get fruit, fill up their warehousing. We tried to with Piles Lane. Some did buy, we bought it out, and some did. I guess a story will be coming up soon about it, maybe through the News Journal. But we tried our best. Some people wanted to move and some didn't. And Bill's right. So I don't know. I hope one day we can buy up all that. Somebody can, and make it so it's peaceful and have the buffers and everything. So I'm going to go with what Jeff Bross was saying earlier. Some of this stuff is pretty tough. Pretty tough. I get calls all the time on the state level as a legislator. And this is my area I was born and raised in. And I think a little bit of history, can you do next time some history on how the port came about and how this all came about? Because a lot of people think the port just came up overnight. It was shipbuilding businesses here way before that. And let people know that back in the day, people walked to work. They walked to the port. The port was number one besides Philadelphia at one time. Christina River was it. The Christina River. So, you know, that's a lot of things you have to look at. But, you know, truck speed, all that you're talking about is on point. Enforcement is very, very important.
I'm empathetic. I had an extended family member that had their general store bought off in 20 years ago at $8.96 and $2.99 right at Summit, and they didn't want to go. And the state didn't bend over backwards to come up with an equitable solution. They ran off base numbers. And when you're asking somebody to not only purchase their property, but pick up their whole lives and move them somewhere else, those numbers have room to move, or at least they should.
Good, right.
Yeah.
The other thing, like Mr. Jeff Ross was saying, I want everybody, don't forget, you got Sunbelt with trucks. You have Nicky Ferrara with his trucks. Dump Truck's a truck.
Right.
Gas with Brian Gas, King Gas has trucks. FedEx is a headache. I don't care if they're listening or not. FedEx are big time violators on Lamson's Lane. You have a truck washing business on Lamson's Lane that truckers go to. Truckers from all over. ARS just moved in. Trucks, they fix trucks. They just moved on Route 9. We got a lot of trucks other than the Port of Wilmington. So Jeff Bross, you hit it right on the nail right on the head. There's a lot of other truck, diamond material trucks running up and down. So that population of trucks is very, very heavy. And my constituents are tired, but it's an industrial area that started way a long time ago. And I've seen pictures from Bill Swatek. Bill had some pictures from way, way back when everything just started around there, from the Delaware River turning into Christina River. And when Dunleith and all these other places were just farmlands with cows. I've seen the pictures taken with biplanes. I hope we can collaborate together, get together, and try to do something for the future and coming up today with all this. And I'm still working right now hard with my folks on Terminal Avenue about the trucking and the traffic and the environmental issues that we're having along there. People can't even keep their cars clean. I mean, you know, in houses and windows, they can't even open them because of truck traffic. So I hope we really gonna do things. And I gotta go to another meeting, but I just wanted to get that in real quick.
Thank you so much, Representative Cook, for sharing. So were there any other questions, Dan? I got the map up here for reference in case we need to look at it for any of the other questions.
Yeah, we have a few more going through here. Next is, will this study cover the additional anticipated truck traffic of the Edgemoor expansion of the new port that is coming? They recently showed that the movement of goods has been changed from rail to trucking.
You can offer a few words, Jeff.
Yeah, let me try and speak to that.
I'll try to put it in perspective. This is the Edgemoor site here, and then here's the existing port here, so that everybody can kind of see the relationship.
Yes, yeah, Drew. I think there initially, and when I say initially, a number of years ago, there was an estimate provided of the split between rail and truck movements in and out of the proposed Edgemoor port. I think those split estimates have been reduced in terms of the amount of cargo or containers that would move by rail. And I think that's what the question is referring to. So,
right.
But again, I think the study, to the extent we have truck demand that could impact our study area from that port facility, it would be included. So,
Right. I mean, they basically share the same corridor. So 495. That's you know, a lot of the trucks in the port use the interchange at Terminal Avenue to get on and off of 495. That's going to be the main point of access for truck traffic. At the Edgemoor is 495, and so as far as the interplay between the two, I'm not too sure whether there's going to be a lot of a product that comes into the Edgemoor port that's destined for this port area. I mean, there's some warehousing, some logistics, but not significant enough to really cause a big influx of containers that then need to be broken down, basically.
right. Well, and to your earlier point, Drew, obviously having Gulf Tainer on the advisory committee is going to allow us to more immediately access that information and input it into the study.
Yeah, great point, Jeff.
Drew. Charlie Weymouth.
Yes.
Drew.
Yes, Charlie.
Backing off a little bit to a bigger picture, and it's the demographics. Is the county of Newcastle has done a horrendous job in terms of controlling access onto our road system, and what's happened out Route 9, which is a primary industrial routing. You now have it impacted by residential, and of course they're all protesting like hell that you're damaging the quality of life of those people that maybe should not have gone in there in the beginning. And you're now into a demographic issue about who is to be employed in the port, how many jobs are they, and how open or closed will labor be, and is that going to negatively affect the people living nearby the port?
So I appreciate the comment there, Charlie. I'm not sure whether there's a question there that I can answer right now, but you know, again, there's a lot of history behind us. To Representative Cook's point, it didn't happen overnight. There are, but I can say that WMAPCO's work on kind of casting a new vision for the area is substantial, and they've got a great bunch of folks that are working on steering committees. We've got projects that are in DelDOT's capital transportation program to help create some change here. And I think to the point earlier where what we're trying to do is to find a win-win, right? So we want continued growth, continued sustainability within the port and those businesses that support the port and are surrounding the port. And we also want to create some improved quality of life for those that live in the area.
Good points. And one thing I hope DelDOT doesn't once again use, and that is, well, it's just going to cost too much money. Well, they put over $1 billion into the 301 bypass and into the business of the loop around Wilmington is notorious. If it's worth it, long range, put the money into it. It might not be on a first cost basis the best thing to do.
Thank you, Charlie. Dan, any other questions?
Yes. Next question is it possible to put roadway restrictions on the trucks for oversized loads by weight or time restrictions along Route 9? Or can that only be imposed based on infrastructural limitations versus community preference?
So to address the point, there has to be a way for those types of vehicles to be able to access the places that they're going. And so it's kind of the genesis of this study in that there's very limited options for trucks to move throughout the corridor. And so so typically when DelDOT restricts trucks and restricts for weight and for size of loads, that's typically due to a structural limitation either on a bridge or on a roadway that would limit those trucks. And currently we don't see that on Route 9. It's the functional class of Route 9, to Charlie's point earlier, is a function of moving all kinds of traffic. And so that's the role that road serves now. And so what we're trying to do as part of this study is come up with alternatives that can maybe reduce the amount of usage that Route 9 gets. So I know that that's kind of a roundabout answer and maybe not answering it directly, but DelDOT would have to chime in on whether or not they would put a restriction on Route 9. From my experience, it would be unlikely.
Next question we have is, what kind of permits and/or authorizations are required or necessary to choose a transportation project alternative?
So I can kind of explain the process a little bit. So as part of this study, we're going to do planning level designs, planning level cost estimates. And as part of our final product, we will be producing a planning and environmental linkages document. Basically, what that'll do is it'll identify all of the concerns, constraints, things that as the project moves into more detailed design will have to be coordinated. I can say that the Pigeon Point Road, basically all of the projects will have a significant environmental justice component to them. The Pigeon Point Road extension will have some significant environmental issues. It goes through a wetland. It dances around a significant transmission line and is adjacent to the rail line, all of which will have to be balanced and coordinated. In addition, it will require some significant reconstruction and some additional bridge widening on 295 that currently DRBA owns, manages, and operates. So, there's a long list of hurdles, but to Charlie's point earlier, and I often say this, all of the easy projects are done. The projects that are in front of us are complicated, they're difficult, and they're not cheap. And so we're going to do our best to frame it up to provide as realistic cost estimates as possible, so that both WMAPCO and DelDOT can make informed decisions moving forward. Any other questions there, Dean?
Yeah, next is, how do the project proponents or sponsors view community benefits, agreements, and processes?
Okay, I'm going to ask you to repeat that one more time, sorry.
Sure. How do the project proponents and sponsors view community benefits, agreements, and processes?
I would say that we definitely value the community. That's part of why we are here, part of our outreach, and so we consider the community part of the team, part of the process. We have community representatives on the advisory committee, as well as trying to reach out through these larger public meetings, and we value the input that's provided. It is going to shape how the study evolves and how the study unfolds, and so we appreciate every comment and every question and all the dialogue throughout the process.
Next question is, will zoning changes be made as a result of this study?
Certainly.
So zoning recommendations are not part of this study. I can say, and if you're interested, the Route 9 study, and maybe Bill can chime in a little bit on this, did some, Bill Switek, I saw Bill Dunter, but Bill Switek might chime in. It did make some zoning recommendations. Again, that's the prerogative of the land use agency. So that would be the city of Wilmington and the Newcastle County.
Yeah, that's right. And I will drop in the chat a link to the Route 9 corridor land use and transportation master plan. And we did make some pretty ambitious ideas and recommendations to try to pull apart the residential and the industrial, as Representative Cook said, that kind of just grew into each other over time in this corridor, and really working with Newcastle County to try to get that as part of the comprehensive plan. I know it was on the agenda at the council meeting last night, and it's something that should be part of the new comprehensive plan that's under development as well, as a community area master plan that we have here. So I'm going to drop that in the chat, and feel free to get in touch if you'd like to talk about any of those recommendations.
Thanks, Bill.
Next one is more of a comment, not a question. As part of this study and project, I suggest and encourage that Leonard's Express Trucking Company and other trucking company parking and storage facility located on Rogers Road near entrance to Dunlith and Hasty Drive be removed, relocated from our neighborhood. Their existence has negative impacts on our health, environmental issues, damaged roads, getting in and out of our neighborhood, trucks stopping, parking, and standing on Rogers Road, and walkers unable to cross safely in front of Leonard's Express due to constant water and potholes. Traffic is inhibited frequently on Rogers Road due to trucks in and out of both trucking company facilities.
Yeah, so that's this area of the study area, and
Drew, that came up in our breakout room, and
okay.
we have some very detailed notes on that, and so we certainly will share those. It's an excellent point, and you know, probably without having to spend any more time on it tonight and interest everybody's time, we do have detailed notes, and we can share that with the group.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Next question we have is, Terminal Avenue is currently the only 4-lane roadway into this industrial area. Has any consideration been given to expanding Piles Lane or the Pigeon Point Road to serve as a southern gateway to the area?
So I would say yes, both a Piles Lane extension out to 9 and an extension of Pigeon Point are both part of the possible solutions. The 1 or 2 lanes is, we will work those details out as we move forward. I will say that that any more than 2 lanes on a Piles Lane extension would be difficult from an environmental perspective, and also trying to get under Route 9. But if it's a dedicated, if it's exclusive, then from my experience, we will have the capacity, at least on the corridor, where you find congestion is typically at the intersections where you need those multiple lanes to get trucks through.
Next question. Many tractor trailers have rest area amenities like electric and HVAC at the I-95 Delaware Service Plaza. This cuts down on truck idling and environmental impacts by allowing the diesel engines to be turned off. Could one of these parcels be turned into designed truck parking? And Dan touched on this briefly in the chat by putting in a website if Dan would like to chime in.
Yeah, actually, it goes back to a study we did I'm trying to think, it was either 2014 or 2015 that looked at, that we identified 3 parcels within this area that could be, to look at that idea for having more port, additional parking closer to the port area. So we did look at, EV truck electrification. I believe it was one of the existing ones, and I think right where your cursor was. So within that study, I'll drop it in the chat box. We looked at 3 areas, but I believe what we'll be doing is, as part of the truck parking study, they'll be kind of revisited. No activity had happened on those, up until this point, but yeah, and the idea was like, identify some areas and then, some general costs, and that, obviously they would be electrified.
And the existing truck stop here did expand truck parking.
Yes.
Just a recent project that was just completed, but again, that's a private truck stop, and they don't provide any electrical hookups.
And I believe you have to pay. Simply just to park there, let alone any other amenities like that.
Right, right.
Next question is, will the traffic impacts be assessed regionally and not just neighborhoods? The example of 495 is a good example that impacts a lot of local and regional travel for residents in the area.
So as part of the traffic analysis, we're going to be looking at 495, at Route 9, and the Heald Street connection, and the interchange with 295 and with Route 9, Cherry Lane, those connections. It doesn't, it doesn't go out to a regional level, I'll say. So this is more of a sub-regional traffic analysis that we're looking at.
So that about wraps up the questions. We do just have one last comment from Councilman Carter stating, if they make thoughtful zoning recommendations from this study, I will consider introducing them at Newcastle County Council.
Great, appreciate that, Councilman Carter. Okay, so we've got there were a lot of links in the chat box, and probably what we'll do is we'll work with WillMapco to maybe get a list of, since this study is really building off of previous studies. I think it's important that the community has access at their fingertips, and I think the website has some of those links already, but maybe not all of them. But we'll make sure that the website on WillMapco at WillMapco leads you to the lead you to all of those websites. So just 2 slides left, and then we'll wrap the meeting up. So I wanted to let you know kind of where we are on the schedule. So we've got tonight is our public workshop. Excuse me. Over the next couple of months, we're going to be completing that traffic analysis that I talked about, and looking at those measures of effectiveness. And then we'll be back out to a public workshop in late May. Depending on how the study goes, hopefully that doesn't slip anymore, but look for us in the late May timeframe for another public workshop and another engagement with you all. And we'll look forward to sharing those results of the traffic analysis and some more details on the alternatives basically that we've presented to you and that we've received tonight through this conversation. And then as a point of reference, we do have the project website at www.willmapco.org/port_analysis. And so this give us about 2 or 3 days, and we'll have this presentation on the website, as well as some of the supporting documents, and as well as some of the links that we talked about to those other projects. And so,
Drew, we had one last question come in.
Okay.
In regards to the traffic impacts assessed regionally and not just neighborhoods, follow-up question was, but does it include the port expansion traffic analysis to the north?
So we're going to discuss with our planning partner, Golf Tainer, the types of commodities, the types of things that they're going to bring in, and we'll see, we'll determine whether or not there's a nexus there, whether any of that freight is going to be coming into the port area where those trucks would need to be managed. Jeff, you have any additional comments on that?
Yeah, just real quickly, Drew, as you're aware, there's also an independent study going on right now on the Edgemoor port, looking at access and truck issues directly coming onto 495. So
that's a good point. So so between that study and our direct conversations with Golf Tainer, we should have a good assessment on its how the 2 ports are going to interplay. Okay. Dan Blevins, do you want to have any final comments? Otherwise, we'll say thank you and really appreciate everybody's feedback.
Don't forget the big picture.
No, I think Drew, you summed everything up. Thanks everybody for your time. A great discussion, great feedback. And 60% of everybody found out about this on the website. We'll certainly have everything posted there pretty soon. And then yes, we'll continue the discussion. My contact information is there. Feel free to reach out anytime. So thank you all.